Okay, welcome back to the Critical Rogues channel. Today we'll be taking the first step into my custom campaign for anyone that might be interested, whether you're aspiring dungeon master, players that might be interested in it, anyone that's even interested in Dungeons and Dragons. This will be a great way to kind of get your feet wet and see if you have any interest in this. Once again, I plan on recording and streaming a reboot of my custom campaign from the beginning with my current players in the near future, which will be archived right here on YouTube, so you can come back and check them out anytime you want as we progress through the story. I'll be putting together individual campaign arc packets containing lore, story, dialogue, digital game maps like you see on your screen right here for your players, and other features to help make running my campaign as simple as possible. Um, this can be done on the back of wrapping paper, anything with 1 inch squares, of course, and you could dry erase boards and things like that. My first gaming table was actually nothing but a office chair box that I cut a hole in and inserted a television into it. My players love the digital maps, and even if they vary or stray from the map areas, that can be easily rectified using the dry erase boards and things like that. But it's great for immersion to have these digital maps available, the color and the visuals. And today's recording will actually seem a little bit more like story time, as there's a block of dialogue that I need to get through to set the stage for any dungeon masters and players. And I tend to do many of the voices of the NPCs in my campaigns, but to save my voice today, I'm just going to be reading the dialogue because it can get strenuous. The King's Blood Tavern is in the town of King's Blood, and you're welcome, depending on the world that you'll be adventuring in, to change the location of the town and inn anywhere you want. But it's real important for the core story that the name of the inn remains King's Blood, and you'll see why in future videos. Okay, the King's Blood Tavern. This is how you're going to be introducing it to your players. The King's Blood Tavern is a well-appointed inn for a small town. It is a modest structure, reflecting the size and scale of the hamlet it is nestled in, with a handful of rooms and a few tables. Though equipped to accommodate travelers, it is obviously designed to regularly host only locals. Worn weapons and trophies, as well as the heads of mundane prizes from local hunts like wild boar and deer, adorn the walls. A cheerful fire crackles in the fireplace. The enticing aroma of simple yet hearty and well-prepared food is abundant. Roasted boar, garlicky greens, and seasoned potatoes smell like they're most likely on the menu. Each simple yet sturdy table is flanked by rough-hewn benches. The inn appears to be nearly at capacity with locals, leaving a lone spacious table available for newcomers. If you look in the upper right-hand side of the main room in the King's Blood Tavern right there, you'll see the fireplace. That's the table that you're going to want to kind of escort your players to, or guide them to, herd them to. There's an old man in worn blue robes who sits at the otherwise empty table, a tall and beautifully carved walking staff leaning against the table at his side. His thick gray hair is capped by a tall pointed blue hat, its peak crooked and bent back. He occasionally raises a long narrow pipe to his lips and exhales small violet rings while staring intently into the nearby fire. Despite his obvious age, his fingers are long, graceful, and nimble looking. An untouched mug of wine sits on the table before him. The innkeeper, once your players are seated, is going to approach the table. Now, there is a barmaid in the tavern, but this innkeeper, you've caught his eye. Your players have caught his eye. The innkeeper approaches your table, absently wiping out a mug with a white cloth looped around his belt. He is tall and well-muscled, but also well into his years. Long, wavy gray hair spills over his shoulders and sharp blue eyes. Okay, now his dialogue starting off, and of course your players, I have been a dungeon master for over 34 years now. And in those 34 years, the two things that stand out from feedback that I've gotten from so many players is that the thing that is most important to them is fun and collaborative storytelling. So there's a lot of dialogue this innkeeper is going to go into, and it's important to the story. So preferably your characters will, your players will kind of let this play out but you never know what's going to happen, so be prepared. So he starts off by saying, "Oi now, I dare say I've never seen quite a sight like this at a single table in all the years I've owned the King's Blood Tavern." And he squints his eyes. Now, this is a real good spot in the dialogue to have and acknowledge your player characters individually. And this is both for new players to get them settled into the concept that they are actually role playing characters in this story and have an impact on it, as well as your seasoned players' immersion. For the players that I had when I initially launched this campaign almost 4 years ago, um, Gorvenal Trugust, that's the innkeeper's name, his dialogue went something like this. He's looking around, an elf, half elf. "Ah, I almost missed you down there, little one, halfling. Half orc. Well, times are changing, and the lot of you armed to the teeth. Not merchant guards by the look of you. I'm guessing you're the adventuring type, and that makes you perfect for what this town needs. See, we have a bit of a problem. Now where be my manners? My name is Gorvenal Trugust, and I used to be an adventurer like you, till I took an arrow to the knee. Clerics got to me a tad late and couldn't quite patch me up right. Then I lost these 2 fingers on my right hand, and never could quite fight the same afterwards. 'Tis just as well, 'cause now I be particularly well equipped to accurately poke someone in both eyes without having to curl a single digit." And then he laughs almost maniacally. "I carried axe and sword from land to land seeking my fortune, and after an unfortunate injury, settled down here with my daughter. Used part of my fortune to fix up this old inn, I did." Now at this point, the old man has that tall blue hat. He stops staring into the fire and fixes his gaze intently on Gorvenal. And Gorvenal notices this look, and he kind of hesitates and stumbles a bit briefly in his speech. Yes, well, a month ago, give or take, a band of kobolds ransacked a farm some distance from town and burned everything to the ground. Killed the Woodleaf family, they did." And Gorvenal pauses and spits into the fire in distaste and frustration. "By my eye, the good one anyway. They practically tore what was left of the place down stone by stone like they was searching for something. Their son, Fabian, survived, but, well, he's been left quite mad. Suppose it be from watching his ma and da die in that way. The whole town felt badly, of course. Let him stay here or there as he pleases. He don't harm no one. Feed him. He mostly stays here at the inn now. Doesn't like beds. Just kind of plops down where he pleases. Strange. He insists on being called Smudge now. Anyway, we felt it proper and right to make sure the kobolds were cleared out and things be made right for the poor boy and his folks. That, and it's probably just a matter of time before they come boiling down and start stealing sheep or trying to hurt someone in Kingsblood. Hired a group of adventurers, but they never came back. Figured they ran scared. Then we hired a group of mercenaries too, but they never came back either. And at this point, he slams his fist down on the table, and it's enough. This is a big guy. He adventured for many decades. It's enough to make the floorboards quake. So I'd be fed up with waiting. I'm willing to put some of my own gold on the line for my days of adventuring and hire folk of my choosing to clear them out. 50 gold for each of you." And at this point, the old man stops drumming his fingers and speaks up, his voice surprisingly strong and robust for his age. "Ye should tell them the rest, Gore." And Gorvenal's face reddens and he raises his voice angrily. "I'm sorry, have we met? I'm not talking to you, and no one calls me Gore, not anymore. Rest of what? Just mind your own business, old man. I'm not trying to hire you." The old man remains calm and relaxed. "Oh no, we have not met, young man." And you take a moment to think about this tall, old, robed stranger referring to the elderly innkeeper as young man. Gorvenal immediately and visibly deflates and calms down, and he also appears to have forgotten how familiar the stranger seemed to be with who he is. "My apologies, stranger. You're right, of course. Travelers, the last group that went to dispatch the kobolds was the lion's share of our town militia. My my daughter, Alida, was among them. I begged her not to go. I've always protected her, but she left, and they haven't returned. I I want my daughter back. Oh, and of course the other militia members too, Benedict, Francis, and Johnshay. Bring them home. 50, no, 60 gold each for the lot of you upon your return." The mug suddenly shatters in Gorvenal's hands, which is an obvious sign of his pent-up frustration. And he just kind of mumbles at that point, free food and rooms as well until your task is complete. On the house, as they say. What say you? Okay, quick. The group meets in a tavern is a pretty old and common theme, and you can adapt a few things around this, but to me, it is one of the most ideal places for your players to come together, especially if your players are role-playing characters that are unfamiliar with each other or strangers. And a tavern, or an inn, or both, as this is not only a familiar spot in shows and movies that players should be familiar with, so it's a comfortable setting location for them to start off with, especially if they're new to Dungeons and Dragons. It's also a very common location where locals and adventurers alike can be found together. There's loads of gossip, if they're paying attention and roll well, from both an inn or tavern keeper, adventurers, and locals. It's also a very easy location to bring player characters who might otherwise be strangers together through a circumstance, a specific circumstance that can be introduced, such as a kitchen fire, a bar fight, attacking NPCs, or other scenarios. And these will serve to immediately give these, especially if they're unfamiliar with each other, these players, their characters, something in common that they can immediately work together with and bond over, even if they don't know each other. There also might be wanted posters or even a board where locals, nobles, merchants, or other adventurers may post quests. So the tavern is an old trope, about as old as video games, where your first quest is to go out and slay rats. But there's so many reasons why it's an excellent place to start your players off, which is one of the reasons why I chose it for my campaign initially, and especially since I did have all but one were completely unfamiliar with Dungeons and Dragons. So if you decide to play my campaign through, this will probably be a good place to place one or two zealots. And in future videos that are going to be coming up here real soon, you'll see why that might be a good idea. Nothing overwhelming, but it'll be something to bond your players together and create this desire to take on this task. You can have them scream or mumble something about the kobolds, the farm, but what they're really kind of after is Gorvenal. They're not going to get him. You need to make sure they don't get him. But that's what they're after. You could also have, maybe even more ideally, a townsperson come barging in and say that there's kobolds that have been spotted outside the inn, perhaps around the hog pen, which is on this map, or the rear of the building. Again, I do plan on making detailed and written story notes, digital maps, and more available in the near future for use in running this campaign and make it just as easy as possible for you. It's also broken down into very distinct arcs. So even if you won't have the time to run such a long campaign, you can cherry pick arcs out of this campaign to insert into your own. My current group and I will also be streaming or recording live sessions of this campaign reboot for viewers so you can see it in action. They'll all be archived right here on YouTube. And naturally, the action and decisions from here will largely depend on your player decisions. But the primary campaign is going to move forward with them going to investigate the Woodleaf Farm. The kobolds, the missing adventurers, the mercenaries, and especially the town militia and Gorvenal's daughter. Again, I'll be working on putting together each campaign arc in great detail. I'll probably even include things like menus in the inns, local shops, and what they're going to have in their inventories and things like that. There's lots of great resources online you can use as well, or add or subtract for it. But I want this to just be as streamlined and seamless and easy for you to pick up and run with. So I appreciate you joining me here today, and I will be putting together the next leg. Where your players will be going next is here. Now there's a few maps that I'm including in case they decide to camp for the night. There might be a random encounter, a road map going through the forest and the woodlands here. that are heading towards this woodleaf farm, but this is going to be the actual location where your players are going to be heading next. Okay, thank you for joining us here, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. Bye.